Hello, welcome to the latest episode of Data Unchained. I'm your host, Molly Presley. If you're new to this podcast, let me tell you just a little bit about what we cover. So if you kind of think back and envision, if you were in tech anyway, 30 or 40 years ago, that mainframes were where not only just data and compute were being generated, but where all the humans and the applications around that compute were located. Everything was very centralized around a single computer. Now, as you fast forward through the past few decades and how things have changed, data is being created everywhere, from satellites, vehicles, data centers, clouds. And now with the advent of AI and GPU computing, that data is needing to be used by all different applications than those that created it. What Data Unchained covers is both some of the challenges around this decentralized data, as well as the tools, technology, and best practices around how to really put it to work for your business or development needs. Today's guest is great to cover the topics that Data Unchained is really focused on. Younes Hairej, and let me check your name. Did I get that right?
That's right. Thank you.
Is the founder and CEO of Aokumo. Younes, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
So before we talk about the show, maybe just tell us a little bit about your background. Let our listeners get to know a little bit more about you.
Sure, absolutely. So my name is Younes. I've been in Japan for more than 2 decades. I'm a long time fan of Japanese anime. I like reading, and recently every time I have a little bit of time, I do a bit of vibe coding. So that's my pastime recently. So my journey to founding Aokumo started back when I was a software engineer at Sony Ericsson. Now it's Sony. Working on Symbian and Android with the Sony multimedia team. Then I spent 7 years at Morgan Stanley, where I built systems for fixed income assets, so pricing, risk management, trading engines. And then I took the role of CTO at a fintech company here in Japan with an Australian subsidiary, and later became the global CIO of the group, leading some quite exciting digital transformations. One of my primary responsibilities was to transform IT department from a vendor-centric to an in-house shop, which meant building an IT strategy and a roadmap, and building the teams, including Cloud Center of Excellence, development, ops, and infrastructure. And we were one of the few traditional FX and ETF brokers to go all in on the cloud, beyond just proof of concept here in the region or in Japan.
So you've taken a kind of interesting path, I would say, coming from Sony and kind of, the more media space into the financial services and then onto a CEO. What was the thread there? How did all these tie together? Was it certain kind of development or just continuous learning? How did that come about?
I think it's a mix of really of everything. First, it's just I always wanted to build. I'm a builder, so I always wanted to have my own company. Obviously, when you see the Elon Musk, the Bill Gates, of the world, you always want to be something like that, and so I always wanted to build my own startup. So one thing that stood out to me during the time, especially when I was at Invest, is how many companies in Japan were really heavily outsourcing their core systems. In Morgan Stanley, we build our own systems, and you learn really the hard way. Building the right thing the right way is really hard. And so for me, seeing how Japanese companies really outsource their core system, which often slowed down innovation, that really inspired Aokumo. So we started as a service provider in 2021, helping enterprises transition to cloud native environments, particularly with Kubernetes. And we were the first company in Japan to achieve the Amazon EKS service delivery, trying to help companies in Japan build in the right way, and taking, moving away from just outsourcing into. So that's what inspired me to start Aokumo.
And so at Aokumo, you're a service company helping companies to go through digital transformation. Is that the right way to describe your offerings there?
Yeah, absolutely. So Aokumo specializes in AI-driven agentic workflow, DevOps automation, platform engineering, and enterprise data lakes. So
I wasn't even close, actually.
Well, a little bit. And it's all powered by low-code, some orchestration layer. So we have with Aokumo AI, we've building an intelligent agent that autonomously acts on metrics, logs, cluster states. So what we're trying to do is really bring the gap between business intent and system execution. So our mission is connect business intent to infrastructure action. No YAML, no dashboards, just intelligent agents that gets things done. That's how we frame it. But yeah, no, you're close.
And so that seems to be the biggest need in enterprise AI, that most enterprises are trying to connect the dots, right? What is their business strategy or their business intent, and how do you put AI to work? That seems like the biggest gap. That sure, there's some things around data readiness and other things, but that's a great focus as far as getting AI into the enterprise workload. How involved do you get in with things like data governance or data security? Do you worry about that, or is that kind of the enterprise's focus, and then your job is to map the business strategies once they load their data? Just tell us kind of how deep do you go in which part of the organizations?
It really depends on the digital fluency of the organization. Some organizations like so let me give you an example. We're currently working with a 180-year-old textile company that had decades of siloed data and mostly analog processes. So we introduced agentic AI to help them streamline operations and unlock the value of their historical data. Now, turning what was really essentially, you can say, trapped legacy information into real business insight. So for them, we focused first on really business value. So there is a lot of waste from ideas to actually close for them. So the ability to do, let's say, natural language search on existing patterns, generate new patterns, edit them on the fly, and apply them to different designs, and then prepare all this data needed to manufacturing is what they really wanted. But when you start digging and start building all these different, then of course you hit the walls, like data security, data governance, accessing to the right data, who has access to what, do they even own some of the data they have, and then when you generate AI generated data, is that how can you use that? How can you check that do not have any logos or any? So there's all these things that they didn't think about, but once you start building these pipelines, start dig in, start asking questions. It's like, okay, yeah, we need this. So definitely this comes up, and that's some of these are some of the things that we also realize is that people do not know, most of these companies do not know what to ask initially, and once you start really working with what they have, and then you start working with their compliance team, then these teams come up, and it's really not just tools. Is really thinking about the metadata, thinking about how everything will fit together to make sure that compliance is achieved. People who do not need access won't have access. So having the right authentication and authorization in place. So these are very, very important. But it's really hard to get all this thought out from the start. So we started by just looking at what business value that we can deliver, and from there we explain how the importance of the having the right policies and compliances in place.
Who typically contracts with you? Who are the people or titles within a company that you're generally working with?
So we work with operations, IT operations.
Okay.
Or in this case, in Japan, it's mostly what we call the DX, digital transformation teams, or the IT operations. The reason why it's not that hard to move from 0 to 1. Obviously, if you have ideas, you do POCs. There's a lot of companies that can help you do POCs, and even internal teams. The problem is moving from 1 to 3 or from 3 to 10. And how do you build an enterprise-grade level systems that can scale, secure, and that's a problem. So it's beyond day one. It's really day two where we excel. So I'll give you an example. We work with a large telecom company, and we use AI to optimize their Kubernetes infrastructure. And so the team is having a hard time operating large-scale systems on Kubernetes. It's just because there are a lot of so they use service mesh, they use all these tools, but it's still hard for them to pinpoint what issues, like performance issues, for example. They every time they have a marketing campaign, for example, the system goes down or performance just degrades, and so you have these issues, and this is where AI really shines, and so we're working with these companies and with their IT operations to help them run these systems on production smoothly, and so it's either IT operations or the head of IT operations. Sometimes it's CIOs, because in some organizations, IT ops sits under CIOs and CTOs, or the DX teams, or what we call digital transformation here in Japan.
It's interesting to consider, any company modernizing with AI, I think is a big undertaking, but Japan has such a established culture. I mean, I think of 130-year-old company that you were talking about. That's really taking legacy maybe even further than most of us think. I think of legacy being maybe 20 or 30 years, not 130 years. But talk to maybe just a little bit about how do you generally see companies in Japan, and I'm sure this maps globally really, but what are they trying to do with AI to modernize? Is it speed of business? Is it finding new products? Is it efficiency? Kind of, what's the top level goal as they're modernizing with AI?
I just came back from Nagoya last week, and I presented agentic AI to executives, Japanese executives, especially in the manufacturing industry, and It's actually fascinating how the appetite to use agentic AI, to use AI is definitely there. The only problem is like where do you start? How can I make my data available, or what do I need to do? And so there are always these questions of how to start. But what I think, from my perspective, in Japan, really when you look at digital transformation, digital transformation doesn't deliver what was expected, which is really transforming the enterprise into an innovative powerhouse. That didn't deliver. It really stopped at cost cutting, at efficiency, and that's because obviously the tools, the digital how we call it ecosystem of also the partners, and with AI, we see a whole different thing. I think we see, for the first time, we see the ability to go beyond just efficiency and cost cutting into really innovating in the business space, creating new values. And we see a lot of companies having their DX innovation. And many of the people that came to our booth last week are actually from these business development teams or DX teams, that they're looking for ways to innovate using AI. And so I think that's a shift that we see in the enterprise, going really thinking beyond just efficiency and automation. Obviously, automation is still big, automating workflows. And making efficiency, especially there's still a lack of how we call it. It's hard to find the right talent in Japan, so efficiency is still an important factor to adopting AI tools. But people are thinking beyond that, beyond just efficiency, but really finding new ways to generate business value. And we see this also with our clients, some of our clients, but especially with the 180-year-old company. They're actually, the mandate from the management is find new ways to create values, and that's what we're doing with them as well. How can we take advantage of the data they use to be able to not only do efficiency or cost cutting, but really create new values. And we've done that with them. Now they're they're creating how we call it, designs, patterns for pets, for different goods. They're working with their clients to solve problems, like, for example, how do you put a certain product on a shelf? Like, how can you simulate that, change colors, and see how it works? And so you start seeing all these and all these use cases, and it's because the ability of AI, the ability of computer vision, the ability of that can really facilitate all this and help them. So yeah.
No, and that makes sense. I've never heard anyone put it quite that way, but the idea that digital transformation drove a lot of efficiencies, but not necessarily changing the output of the business, like the products, the go-to-market. That's a really interesting way to think of AI and agentic AI, but coupled with other technologies like deep learning or computer vision, depending on who the company is. That's a great way to articulate that. So as you've been on this journey, it sounds like with a variety of different types of companies, are there any specific pitfalls that you've seen repeatedly, or any areas that as a organization is transitioning to new technology, they need to watch out for?
From my experience, I'm a bit biased, but I think first is, and also from our experience really, when building these agentic AI flows or workflows, sorry, is first the over-reliance on closed systems that lock companies into specific tools without a data-first view. And this creates a vendor dependency, and it also limits flexibility. And then, again, we're going back to, and this has been a problem for Japan, really vendor lock, big vendor lock, because there's a lot of customization, a lot of and outsourcing, a lot of their core businesses. So we hope this is not going to repeat, and that, especially now with open source models are getting really, really better, so that you have alternatives. So you can, so it's really important to just look at first the whole data universe, metadata and all that, and look at what would be the best tool solution for what the business is trying to achieve. So I think first is really looking into the whole spectrum, not just looking at closed tools. And the second, it ties to the first one, is focusing or prioritizing tools over thoughtful metadata architecture. And we see this a lot. So we see teams or companies get really excited about new AI tools, but don't invest in proper data governance, as you mentioned earlier, metadata strategy or data lineage. And this usually leads to poor visibility and just brittle data pipeline. Now, the third one is ignoring. It's a balance, but ignoring agent-based orchestration. So many companies still rely on manual processes for scaling and incident response, which is becoming unsustainable as systems grow more complex. So they end up with talented engineers, as we've seen with some of our clients, spending time on repetitive tasks instead of strategic innovation. So what we've learned from our Amazon EKS service delivery experience is that really successful cloud native transformation requires thinking about the entire stack, from infrastructure to the application layer, and building in governance and automation from day one, not as an afterthought. But also understanding that they too gets really hard that if day one is not well thought out is really key. And also for management to appreciate the invisible work that needs to be done initially. So I think instead of thinking just about tools, it's just like moving to the cloud or adopting cloud native. It's really important to understand the whole stack and understand what, not just this tool, but also what models are good for what use cases. If we need to run certain open source models internally, what needs to be done? How can I take advantage of the open source? There's a lot of open source tools that are out there that really can help you. Recently, we're experiencing with LLMD, and it's just so impressive. So you're able to run these models internally and providing a lot of values to internal clients, because you're looking at the whole spectrum. You're not just looking at a certain tool. And so we these are some of the sorry, I might ramble on that, but these are some of the pitfalls that we see teams or companies.
It's really interesting that you touched on a a variety of areas that drive towards a different way of thinking, maybe even a different talent set within your organization. But maybe we just delve in a little bit deeper. You talked about in Japan, and I think this is true in most countries, that idea that most everything was built around kind of proprietary or closed systems. That's kind of how technology evolved. And then in parallel, there was some open source, but I agree. I've seen a big shift towards open source, particularly in AI and open architecture, so you can move things around, that you're not, kind of tied with one application or one human to one data set, but you need to open that up. Maybe talk just a little bit more about how does a company move from closed to open, whether that's skill sets or moving data that was created in one place into a more open environment. Maybe just spend a minute or two talking about that. And maybe another way even to ask it is, do people just deploy a open environment, like a Kubernetes-based environment in the cloud, and then copy all their data to it and now connect their applications and the user to it? Or is it integrated, into what they have today? Is it a mix of the two, or they just have to start fresh and start over? How do you see that happening?
The great thing is there are a lot of tools. They say you bring your compute to your data, not the other way around, and now it's really possible with Kubernetes anywhere, Kubernetes at the edge, and ML at the edge. So it is really possible to bring your compute, your intelligence where your data is, and there are a lot of vendors, a lot of tools that can help you, even bridge that gap between compute and data. But I don't think you need to move your data really. If your data is there for whether it's compliance reason or for a reason, but understanding having an idea about what data you have, understanding the universe of your data, the metadata, is really important. There are a lot of tools that can help scan, understand, give you visibility on your data. And so open source makes it easy to do POCs, make it easy to experiment with different tools, and without the lock-in. And again, it really depends on what you're trying to achieve. What are the use cases that the organization or the team is trying to work on. But yeah, I mean, there are a lot of open source alternatives, whether it's models, whether it's queuing, whether it's scheduling, and so there's a lot of open source alternative. But the idea is really just to understand first the business domain, understand the problem domain that trying to solve, and understanding the data universe. Is the data enough for what we're trying to achieve? Do we need to get data from a different data center or from a different place to be able to have better context or have better, or do we need to enrich that data? Where can we get the missing data, the missing piece? Can we get it from an AWS marketplace, for example, or and are we how I call it, training models internally for specific use cases, or so so it really depends on the use cases. But open source definitely, it helps you do a lot of POCs. It helps you test all this, understand your use cases and how you can achieve it.
A couple other questions I'd like to ask about your company. Yeah. So you've talked a lot about business processes as well as technology. I'm just curious, what's the mix of skill set in your company? It sounds like you have folks who know a lot about deploying infrastructure in the cloud and working with open source, but you must have a lot of business experience too on how business processes work. When one of your clients engage with you, what kind of skill sets do you bring to the table?
So our COO is come from a system integrator background, and he's Japanese. He understands Japanese culture, the sales cycle, the needs, the team structure, so that's really very important when you deal with the enterprise client, and of course understanding the domain. We're solving a problem that we actually experienced. I ran teams, like I had operations teams. We saw how really difficult to operate mission critical systems, and to scale them and make sure that it's secure. So what we're trying to solve, we've already been there, and so when we talk with clients, we usually talk from really their pain points, from the problem that we're trying to solve, not from the technical perspective, and that's something that you really get to hone and learn as you speak with more clients, and even with different teams within the same organizations, so having the understanding of the cultural nuances, the sales cycle, the needs is definitely key, and showing the ability to actually to solve the problems is another key. So when you show that you've done a similar, you solved a similar problem for a different industry or for the same industry, that gives the client or the potential client confidence to work with you. And if they understand that you understand the nuances, the cultural nuances, understand that, for example, I'll give you a good example with one of the clients that we're working with. It's a big telecom company. We understood the constraints that we could not get access because the team structure is very, very siloed. You have DB, you still have the DB team, you still have the ops team, you still have the infra team and all that. So what we did, we just looked at what we could have, which is logs coming from the team that we worked with. We did not access the code. We did not access a lot of these, a lot of the tools that could have really helped us solve the problem. But what we did using AI, we used what we had to do a reverse engineering and understand the traffic pattern of the systems, and from there understand where the problems and talk in terms of with the clients in terms of solutions. And so working with, knowing to work with what we have is also a good asset, and that comes from experience and also from technical understanding of the problem domain and AI, using AI.
When we think about customers potentially reaching out to your company for assistance, kind of in this journey, is it just Japanese customers you work with, or Japanese companies, or do you work outside of Japan as well?
We work outside of Japan with. We work with clients in Australia and in the Middle East, and we work with and also in the APAC region. So we work with global clients. We have a big financial institution that we work with as well.
Okay. And when they reach out to you, is there a specific problem they're generally looking to solve? Do they pretty much know, I want to go use AI to solve a kind of well-explained problem? Or is it a little bit more generic where they say, we've been on a journey with our digital transformation. We know we probably should use AI. We don't know why. Kind of where on the spectrum are people with even being able to articulate their need when they reach out to you?
In most cases, they have a problem. And usually it has to do with Kubernetes workload or infra, and they need help with.
Okay.
Kubernetes is amazing. I wrote an article about the first decade and the second decade, and I think it's an amazing platform, especially with AI inference and all that. I think, but Kubernetes is really hard, and you need the right skills, and they're expensive. So these clients, they have specific problems, or they have new requirements, whether it's to deploy Kubernetes on-prem or have a multi-cluster setup. And so it starts from this. And then this is where because we use AI, this is where we introduce Aokumo AI to help them, with their support, to have them go through the data they have, to have them, with a natural language, understand their current system, see, and in some cases even automate how incident response, for example, or scaling their nodes or their pods, and so it's usually from a pain point they have, and they come to us to solve, because we're, at the end of the day, we're a Kubernetes shop, we're an infrastructure shop, but we're and Aokumo AI is our agent platform to help these teams operate intelligently their system.
I'd love to get a copy of that paper. I'd like to read it myself, and we'll also drop it in the show notes from this episode, so others who might like to read it. As we tie up, is there anything else that you recommend to the audience as they're thinking about agentic AI today, and maybe the next things to be prepared for or on the watch for that may be coming around the bend? It seems things are changing awfully quickly in our world right now.
First, just understanding the whole stack, understanding the whole AI stack, from infrastructure, what's needed, like how these tools work, like how these models are. You don't need to understand them deeply, but you don't need to read papers, but just understanding the whole stack, I think, is important for management. And definitely one of the key, I think, success factors is really having ownership, having certain roles that can make sure that AI tools are used. Like, for example, we use Cursor everywhere, and so understanding the benefit of these tools and prepare the team to use them. It's not just an option, but really you got to decide whether you want to be an AI first. You're going to make it mandatory to use these tools, or make it easier for the team to. When I say mandatory, make it easier for the team to use these tools. In a compliant, secure way. So having that strategy and having an owner for that strategy I think is key. But definitely watching the space is very important. Understanding what models and understanding also making sure that when you use these tools, you have the right structure in place, like authentication and authorization, who has access to this data. When you build a RAG tool, for example, making sure that people who should not have access to certain data do not have access to. And that needs planning and needs understanding of the tool, understanding of what you're trying to achieve, whether it's 10x the performance of the team, or create innovative way of doing things. So So I think definitely watching understanding the full stack, watching the tools, using these tools on a daily basis is important. For us, it's not just we're using our tools. We're using Aokumo AI on a daily basis, and that helps us improve it and helps us. And we're using cursors on a daily basis. We're using all these tools on a daily basis. So it's part of our stack. Yeah, I think that's it's important to use these tools on a daily basis.
Absolutely. Well, Younes, thank you so much for joining. I personally find it interesting to see some of the both differences and similarities in different countries on how things are being approached with AI and AI strategies. And so getting a chance to hear from a Japanese organization is a little bit new for our audience, I think, and a great perspective. While there's a lot of similarities, there's also some interesting differences and great things to learn. So I really appreciate you joining the show and wish you the best with your endeavors over at Aokumo.
Thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thanks for listening to Data Unchained, powered by Hammerspace. To learn more, visit hammerspace.com. If you have a guest you would like to hear on the show, email me at molly@hammerspace.com.